Paul Alexander is an American who has spent most of his life inside a machine known as an iron lung. At the age of 6, he contracted polio in one of the largest outbreaks of the disease in U.S. history back in the 1950s. The disease nearly took his life. The infection caused by the disease affected his spinal cord, and Paul gradually lost all movement in his body. In 1952, he became very ill and woke up inside a large machine, surrounded by several other people inside similar machines. The machine is a sealed capsule that suctions in oxygen through negative pressure, allowing the lungs to expand, so the patient can breathe. He was forced to live in this machine precisely because his lung was one of the parts of his body that simply stopped functioning. He could only move his head, neck, and mouth. Despite the machine working very well, most patients at the time had a very low life expectancy. Doctors told the parents of young Paul Alexander that he wouldn't have much time left. Most of his classmates who also used the iron lung did not survive. However, Paul continued to survive. The hospital allowed his family to take him home with the machine, so they could spend what might have been their last Christmas together. But the truth was that it was far from his last. Against all odds, Paul continued to live. As time went on, he realized that he could live for many more years, and began making plans. The young man decided to study. Unable to take notes in class, he developed a great capacity for memorization. In 1967, he graduated from high school without ever attending a class in person. He graduated in law from the University of Texas in 1978, and completed his doctorate in 1984. Since then, he has spent decades working in law, building a successful career. Paul Alexander is now 76 years old, surpassing the average life expectancy in the U.S. He was recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the person who has spent the most time living in a negative pressure ventilator. Eventually, he has been able to leave the iron lung for a few minutes, using a technique he learned in physical therapy called frog breathing, which involves swallowing air to fill the lungs. Paul said he lives a normal life doing pretty much what everyone else does. He wakes up, washes his face, brushes his teeth, has breakfast, and starts working. He just needs a little more help to do it. Currently, there are only 2 people still living in the so-called iron lung, Paul and American Martha Lillard, who has been inside the machine for 69 years, which she fondly calls her dear friend. Martha also had polio in the same devastating outbreak of the 1950s. The disease is now virtually eradicated in the West thanks to vaccination, but there are still many survivors, such as Martha. The polio vaccine became widely available in 1955, when millions of Americans were vaccinated. Unfortunately, Paul and Martha contracted the disease before that. Despite the discomfort, she tries to keep her days busy by watching old movies and taking care of her dogs. In 1990, her iron lung broke, but she ended up inheriting another machine from a man in Utah. She continues to live with it to this day. And you might be wondering why there are no more people using these iron lungs nowadays, or technically called negative pressure ventilators. Well, negative pressure ventilation has been largely replaced by positive pressure ventilation, intubation, or biphasic ventilation. These methods are cheaper and more comfortable for the patient.